So what's happening, YouTube? This is Doug Jenkins back with a video. This is going to be about vocal processing. This is the way that we process vocals in a stem session. This has just worked really well for me, and it depends on it. Obviously, it depends on the genre, it depends on the style, it depends on the arrangement. Most of the time, though, we're going to be doing a parallel on the vocal track. So today I got another camera shooting down on the rack here. If you don't have the hardware to do this, you can still do this in the box. They have plugins. I think stock plugin is a 76. It's a B76, so you can pretty much incorporate that if you want to. But what we're going to do is in the software, it would look like this. I would actually have two tracks. Okay, let's not delete that one, huh? So in the software, we'd have two separate tracks, two separate processing going on. You could have created an auxiliary and then processed that different. What happens with the summing, the way that my studio works, is we have the Elop Amari, which I'm going to do a video on, I promise. I have like a certain plan. I want to take it out of the rack, and I want you guys to hear it just alone. I don't want anything else to influence it. This week we have a few sessions. Once I get those sessions done, I'm gonna pull it out. I'm gonna say, okay, let's loop and let's show you the AD and the DA. That was my plan, but it keeps getting, fortunately, it keeps getting interrupted. So with a 76, the one vocal, what I'm doing, and I'll show you here. So this is the original vocal. So I actually have like a real smooth kind of EQ. I don't have anything as smooth as the Portico in the box, but I have something where I want to give it some high end, some brilliance, some life. So what I'm doing to the one stem is I'm actually cutting a lot of the bottom, and I'm pushing the frequencies that I want, like the air frequencies. So I probably have in the rack over here, I have a Maag, and I'm pulling these frequencies out. So check this out. So I'm really driving this. Let's try to match it. So I'm doing 20. And then I got the air, I got the sub band all the way up. So I'm really inflating it to give it a 3-dimension. The next thing I'm doing is, let me see here. I'm trying to match it in the box here. About 4.5 I'm boosted. This I'm cutting a little bit around. Wow, this is crazy. It's the same exact EQ. They did well. It's spot on. So yeah, I'm just giving a little bit of a tuck and a little bit of a boost. That was me, I think, trying to get rid of some of the room on this one. And this is what this one, so I'll try to gain match it. Let's hear it. So we're going to hear this. Now, this is what's crazy. So this is printing. So this one, actually, I got to put on just the Amari out. So the Amari in this case is my main DA to my monitors. It's what I'm hearing back in the studio. The pure 2 out is actually my signal path in the studio. So I have, what is it, 6 out and 4 in this situation. So I just have these two main interfaces running. I love doing it this way. They're really pristine interfaces. You will get to hear some of the Amari in this. So we're just going to hear it with just the plugins.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him.
So check it out without it.
He hung around with him. He wanted.
So we can push it a little harder on this.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be.
A little bit more of this.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him.
So I wanted to create like a top end kind of sound. And then on the bottom one, and I'm going to show you what the hardware does and why it's such a benefit. But if you don't have the hardware, you can still get creative. So I don't want it to be about that, because if you can afford it, and if you can save up for like the Bluey, the CLA Black Line, thing's insanely incredible. So let's go to like a Sheps and add some of that harmonic, or let's go to let's go to the Decapitator. See, because I know what I already did, and I'm going to try to match it in the box. So then I had a driven one where the low end, trying to bring that low end of his voice out. That's something that I really like in a vocal mix. So let's hear it here.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him, but they never liked him. They always try to fight him. It was never in him. Moms raised them in church. He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him, but they never liked him.
So I want to match that to the actual low end instruments.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him, but they never liked him. They always try to fight him. It was never in him. Moms raised them in church.
So I'm not getting the exact image, but I pushed this a little harder.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him, but they never liked him. They always try to fight him. It was never in him. Moms raised them in church. Said he had a call.
It's close. So when we add them together, now this is a parallel. So you can either duplicate the track in the mix. That's not the, I wouldn't say that's the right way to do it. You'd usually just send an aux off of like a mixing board. You'd have an auxiliary, and that would be the second of that track, and then you can put different effects on it, and you can compress it. Now, this is why you do a parallel. That vocal alone that I just totally destroyed is going to sound horrible. I mean, so when we add in context with the second one, it should sound okay, but let's see what happens. It might sound horrible.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him.
So there's some stuff in here I don't like. So I might have chose the wrong plugin, but there's some of this and a little bit of this, probably up into here.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him, but they never liked him. They always try to fight him.
So that is pretty much the gist of what I'm doing. So I want you to hear it now, the way that we processed it outside the box. Absolutely incredible sounding. Let's make sure I'm not forgetting anything, or I didn't do anything. Yeah, I don't think I had anything on there. That might have been the only bump. So let's bypass this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run it through the output of the Pure 2. Now, the output of the Pure 2 is feeding the hardware. So, same principle. It's going to hit, as you can see on this camera here, what happens is it's Pure 2 out 1 and 2. So, it's actually hitting two line amplifiers on the 1073, so I can drive those. Those are then hitting the SSL EQ, which you just saw on screen. Then it's hitting the SSL dynamic module. I'm not using much of it, only the gate to give it a little bit more hype. Then the left side, or the left pre, is hitting the Bluey 76, which is incredible. That's an awesome piece. And then the right one's hitting the Portico, which is an EQ line amplifier slash compressor slash de-esser. Those are really, really nice. That's why my racks pretty much conform to this. I do a lot of this kind of work where we're processing stems, bringing them back into the session, and then the sky's the limit. How much do you want to do? So then that all feeds into the eq4, which you're seeing on screen right here. But this is the actual Maag. This is the mastering version. Same concept, same vibe. This one you could sit there and dictate which is better. I don't want to do that in this video. But then that's going to drive into the Manley, the Elop Plus. So that's actually a LA2A style compressor. So I did a quick rundown in the box how you can mess with two different vocals. You can actually copy one and start tweaking and trying to get the tone out. That wasn't a keeper. So we're not going to keep that. And then the other one's going to be this silky smooth. So between the two, you're going to get to hear the actual the processing between these and how great they really do at this job. So here we go. And I know my sessions changed because I had to shut the video off to open up another session. And unfortunately, I didn't save the final. I saved his final, the one that we sent to him that he already signed off on. But this is just, I don't want him to freak out. He's like, what the heck? What are you doing? Changing my mix? No, but we actually finished this. He's good to go. So we're going to push play on this. And I'm going to start just with, let's just hear it. Let's see what we got.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him, but they never liked him. No, they always try to fight.
Now, you hear that vibe? I'm going to mute just the Portico. I mean, listen to the depth of this thing. And I'm crushing this. Now, if I was going to use this just on one stem, there's a wet dry on this thing, if you can see that from the camera. My intent was that at first, and then I started hearing it with the parallel, and I'm like, man, I could use this for the silk and the top. So this actually has silk on it, and I'll show you when I engage that. It's really cool. So listen to the crunch. I muted the Portico, which is the second track. As you would see, just like on screen, I had 2 tracks. I'm just muting one of them over here on the hardware.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like
I mean, that's
him, but
crushed.
They never liked him. They always try to fight him. It was never in him. Moms raised him in church. Said he had a call on him to do the Lord's work. He listened to rap music.
Let me hear that in the phone.
He wanted the money stacked. He adopted the grammar, but never got the.
So let me amplify that so you can hear it a little bit better.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him, but they never liked him. They always try to fight him. It was never in him. Mom.
So that's just one stem. We're going to add the second one, but the reason I wanted you to hear it a little bit louder is it's that warm, low vibe, okay? That's not sub. There's no sub going on in there. It's 100 to, I would say, about 400 is really crushed, and it's pulling in. The reason I did it on this track is because when I add in context, you'll hear in a second, it just sounds great with that bass. So if I get it tucked just with that bass, it sounds like he's part of the band. He's in the mix now. So listen one more time as I blend that part into the mix.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him, but they never liked him. They always try to fight him. It was never in him. Moms raised him in church.
So I'm actually using that stem. I'll leave the headphones on. I'm using that stem almost like a just another color, another tone, or another vibe, another feel. But it sounds really similar to that bass. It sounds like he's tucked. But now when I add this top one, let me just mute the one we were just listening to. So here's the top one. Now listen to how high end that instrumental is, and listen to the percussive stuff like the hi-hats.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him, but they never liked him. They always try to fight him.
Let me silk it.
Never in him. Moms raised him in church. Said he had a call on him to do the Lord's work. He listened to rap music, watching videos. He wanted the money stacks, them big booty hoes.
Okay, so now you hear that. So now when we add them both together, check it out. It's insane. It's really cool.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him, but they never liked him. They always try to fight him. It was never in him. Moms raised him in church. Said he.
Isn't that crazy? So that's a great way to really, really, really dissect a vocal and get about anything you want. Now, I'm doing a little EQ on this Portico, and I'm just tucking a little bit around, I would say about 500. I heard some stuff around 1K. I'm pushing. And what's cool on the Portico is there's a de-esser. So as you drive it harder, one of the tricks you can learn one of the tricks I learned is when you drive that frequency range that usually causes that shrill and things like that. Some de-essers on this Portico especially, when you drive it like that, it's got this sound. Like it sounds tapered, but it sounds good, and you can still hear all that great impact of that frequency range without it ripping your face off. The other thing is that low end, and what we did with that Bluey with Black Lion, hats off to them, man. I know they sat with CLA out there, and I watched something with Mitch Gallagher, and I was like sold. I mean, it has a mojo. And now I get to experience it in my studio, and I'm just thankful that company took the time with him to make that, because it really does it does what they claim it does. It has this it thing. It's just sort of like just sits it right there. In this demo though, I'm not using it as a wet dry. I'm not using it like he would have used it in that mix. I'm using it like a parallel. And I found out that it really does well with that aggressive low end, and it really just brings that into focus in a mix. So yeah, that is a great trick. If you're having a hard time with the low end of your vocal, sometimes you might just want to take it and duplicate it in your session. Another thing you can do is this. If you just, let's say you have this verse, you can just create an aux. Just go to track, new track, and then just create a, I would probably say a mono aux. And then just create that aux, and then that can be your parallel. So there's two ways of doing it. You could either duplicate the vocal, or you could just grab an aux, and then you can start processing this different, and then on the initial track, just leave it be, let it be what it is. But yeah, did you notice the big body that came of that? Let me play it one more time. I love the sound of it. I really do. And then effects to your liking. I think we added on the final, we added a room verb. This is one of my faves, dude. I tweaked it for about 40 minutes. So that's sort of a bummer. That's not it. It's this one here. Where is it? Where is it? This one. I like this one. So yeah, I'll add that. That's a send off of the main vocal. So yeah, this is the vocal. And then I had this. I think I brought the decay down. I brought the verb up. We'll figure it out.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him, but they never liked him. They always try to fight him. It was never in him. Moms raised them in church. Said he had a call on him to do the Lord's work. He listened to rap music, watching videos. He wanted the money stacks, them big.
Dude, that's just crazy how clean and clear. And you're also getting to hear the conversion in this studio. I mean, it's an insanely clear converter. The Elop Pure 2 actually works very well. It has a little bit of a difference, and I hope to do that in the video on the Amari. But it has this pristine sound, this really unique, I would say high fidelity. It has this pristineness where the Amari has a little bit of that tapered, big, holographic, just larger than life sound. So between the two, when you bring the vocal through the output of that DA, which is the Pure 2's DA, that's hitting all the gear, and then that feeds back into the AD of the Amari. It's a really cool way to do it. It's a really cool way to be flexible. So to end the video, I want to just talk about one last thing. Anything today I would recommend anybody is just continue to have fun doing this, and don't ever get bogged down with it. There's been times in my life where you can get a little bit too meticulous, but at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're using, whether it's hardware or plugins, you're being creative with it. And once you understand space, image, depth, compression, you understand EQ and how to get things to shape, you understand how to make space for other instruments, the sky's the limit. With any DAW in a pretty decent setup, you can get creative. If you want to take that to the next level, you want to get into stem mastering and stem mixing, then, I mean, I would honestly say really study hardware, understand certain mixing boards, certain compressors, vacuum tubes, and that's the joy in this. So if that's something that wakes you up in the morning, it does to me. I just like, I'm a gearhead, and I enjoy different tones, different sounds. And yeah, so that's a great way to work with a vocal. Maybe if you have a vocal sitting around in a mix that you just cannot get to sit well, a lot of times, I'm going to show you the biggest mistake before we get off this video, is a lot of times we end up taking out all that good low mid information because we want to compress it hard. So we end up doing this.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him.
So we actually end up doing that to get that low end out, and then we end up boosting on that track, and we're pushing, and it starts to sound unnatural.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him.
You see what I mean?
They never liked him.
Instead of saying, okay, well, I like that low end, let's just add a top end to another one with total different compression. That's pretty much what we're doing.
He hung around with him. He wanted to be like him, but they never liked him. They always tried.
And he's got it's such a bigger sounding, in your face sound. A guy asked me this question. This was really one of the reasons I wanted to do this video. There's a lot of ways to get to this result. It could be a multi-band, it could be limiters, it could be different reverbs, it could be parallel. Most of the time what you're hearing with that big in-your-face vocal is parallel compression. In this case, it's summed. Now it's externally summed hardware-wise. Be very careful when you're doing this, that's why I said duplicate the track, because if you have a slower computer and that aux is messing with latency and it's off by a few milliseconds, you'll hear it and it'll actually flam. It'll sound really, really bad. So my name's Doug Jenkins. This was just a look at parallel compression. You got to hear the Bluey compressor being punished on just the low end, and then you got to hear the silk and the smoothness of the Portico. When you put those together, it's like a perfect. It just sounds right, and that's why we use this stuff. So hopefully you guys can continue to be patient with me as I get this Amari video out. I have a plan to do it this week. I told a guy on my message, and I apologize to him, that I was going to have it in the next week, and stuff gets going, and I apologize to anybody that's avidly watching this channel, because it does mean a lot, and everybody that watches, you mean a lot. You really do, because without this, it's a blessing to me to continue to do these videos. So once again, my name's Doug Jenkins, imixnmaster.com, and if you ever want to send something my way, please do. We love working on stuff. So we'll see you guys here on the next video. We'll see you.